Trump stumping in Minnesota later today. He will, of course, be talking tax cuts on this tax day. And joining us now is White House economist Kevin Hassett. Great to see you, Kevin. Thank you for taking time out. As I just say, today is tax day, but not all Americans feeling the love from the Trump tax cuts. Some having to pay more than expected. Does the president need to do a better job of selling the tax plan? He'll do that in Minnesota, but does he need to really get out there and ram home the point that the tax cuts overall have been good for this economy?
Well, I mean, they really obviously have been good for the economy. So you know, it's a strong position to begin with when the facts are on your side. And, you know, when I was looking through the facts to get ready to speak with you, the two that really jumped out at me were, one, if you go back to 2016, the Congressional Budget Office looked ahead to 2018, and they said that we were going to create about 50,000 jobs a month in 2018. In fact, we created 206,000 jobs a month. And so that's 150. It's almost 2 million more jobs in 1 year alone, and it's really because of the tax cuts. The second thing is that in the GDP release, they tell you what disposable income is for families. And the disposable income for families in 2018 went up by $2,300. And so there's really, really good news out there for Americans. And, you know, I mean, we talk a lot about a bunch more, but with that good news, the president's got a lot to talk about.
But do you think that message gets lost, Kevin, a little bit from, obviously, members of the Democrat Party saying, oh, it's a tax cut for the rich, the working person doesn't get what he or she is supposed to. Do you think the president needs to do a better job of getting out there and explaining what you just explained to me?
Well, you know, the president is great at explaining things. The thing that I would ask, actually, and you know, you always ask tough questions, but you know, get one of the Democratic science deniers here on TV and ask them, hey, you know, what's your theory for why we got 206,000 instead of 50,000 jobs in 2018? Why did that happen? Was it just, you know, miraculous luck? Did some Martians come down and give us strong economic growth? What's your theory for why that happened, if not the tax cuts? And I haven't heard one yet. I mean, maybe you have, but I haven't.
I think it was the planet Pluto, actually. But anyway, we'll move on, Kevin. Listen, you believe the U.S., the GDP, will grow at or above 3% for the next 5 years? Did I read that correctly?
On average, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
You do believe that?
I sure do, yeah. And there's a real simple way to think about it. Remember in 2016 when President Trump was elected that we had just come off of 8 years where we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs and everybody was locating their plants overseas because we were the highest corporate tax place on earth. Now we're an attractive corporate tax place and the factories are coming home, but that's not something that happens overnight. The adjustment to the new economy that we're going to have because of the strong corporate tax climate is something that's a 3 to 5 year thing. And so the boom that you saw last year is something that absolutely should continue.
And should we perhaps see better than that, 4%, based on all the things that are happening to the economy that you've just talked about?
You sound just like the president when I'm talking about why 3% looks so good at his office. He wants 4%. You know, I could say that it's pretty likely that we'll get a quarter of 4% this year, just like we did last year. But that the underlying fundamentals, the math of it is that we're looking at a 3% year. And, you know, we've got 700 pages in the economic report of the president where we talk about why that's our forecast. And I feel pretty comfortable with it.
Next one, Kevin. Goldman Sachs, by the way, saying that Mr. Trump's going to win based on the strength of our economy in 2020. So I guess that's playing into what you're saying, but you agree with Goldman Sachs.
Well, you know, again, I'm not a political scientist, but Ray Fair, who's a fantastic Nobel Prize-winning economist, Ray Fair has this model where he basically says if GDP is strong, the incumbent wins. And I believe that GDP will be 3% next year. And I think that if that happens, Ray Fair will tell you that the incumbent would win, regardless of which party. You know, if the president has that strong a growth rate, then they're likely to win.
Which makes next year critically important. You don't see any recession on the horizon, maybe mid next year or anything like that?
No, I think it's highly, highly unlikely. And the way to think about it is that with all the factories coming home, you know, the unemployment rate in the threes, wage growth so high, then you can expect demand to go high, too, because everybody, you know, in the CEA Twitter account, you can see we just put up a chart that the bottom 10% of the income distribution saw wages grow last year 6.5%. And so that 6.5% growth in wages is going to lead to 6.5% growth in consumption for those folks. And that's a real strong underpinning of a strong economy.
All right, let me ask you this. President Trump, going after the Fed yet again, says the market would have been up 10,000 additional points if the Fed had done its job. This was the tweet here. The Fed, as you can see right there, says, was raising rates really a killer, as the president says? Kevin, do you agree with what his assertion is? If you didn't tighten, if you didn't raise rates, this market would be 5,000 to 10,000 points higher.
You know, I think that the president's supporters expect to hear his opinion about every topic, including the Fed, every important topic. But
right.
At the CEA, my job is to not comment on Federal Reserve policy. I can say that if you look at what happened last year in December, it seemed like there was a lot of market uncertainty that has subsequently been resolved. But I have to leave the Fed alone.
You are very diplomatic. That's why you're at the White House. All right, finally, Kevin, any update can you give us on China trade talks? It seemed like the Treasury Secretary was kind of intimating we're in the final lap now. Is there any signs of progress?
Yeah. I used to run the relay race and the 4x400, and so we're headed towards the final lap. But I think it's not the 4x100; it's the 4x400, and we got to hand the baton to the last guy and hope we don't drop it. But that's about where we are.
Right. Don't drop the baton. Also,
that's right.
Kevin Hassett. As always, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Quick check of the big board and taking a look.